I never loved you? That was all Grayson Kane said over breakfast with a newspaper in one hand, and his wife's heart breaking across the marble floor like the coffee cup she dropped. 11 months of marriage. 11 months of waiting for a touch, a smile, a reason to believe she was more than a name on a contract. Evelyn sat in that cold Chicago mansion wearing a diamond ring that felt more like a lock than a promise, and realized something terrifying. The man who never loved her had no idea what her father left hidden behind the wall. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about power, survival, and the moment a broken woman stops begging to be chosen. Stay with me until the end, like the video, and comment where you're watching from tonight. The marble floor was still wet, where the coffee had spread dark and bitter, seeping between the white veins of stone, like something alive. Evelyn Hart Kane did not move, not when Grayson's footsteps faded down the hall, not when the front doors opened somewhere far away and the cold morning air slipped through the mansion, not when a car engine started outside low and expensive, then rolled down the long driveway toward the black iron gates. She sat at the dining table with her hands in her lap, staring at the place where her mother's coffee cup had broken. There were people in that house. Too many people. Guards by the doors. A butler in the West Hall. Ruth Doyle in the kitchen. Men with guns in their jackets and secrets behind their eyes. But somehow, Evelyn had never felt more alone than she did in that enormous dining room beneath that crystal chandelier, with the ghost of Grayson's words still hanging in the air. I never loved you, Evelyn. Not for one day. She heard the sentence again. Then again. Each time it landed differently. The first time it had been a blade, the second time a verdict. Now it became something colder. A key, because a woman who is not loved cannot be disappointed forever. A woman who has been told the truth has no more illusions to protect. A woman who has nothing left to lose can finally ask herself why she has been so afraid to leave. Ruth Doyle moved quietly across the room with a dustpan in one hand and a broom in the other. She was 70 if she was a day, thin as a church candle, with gray hair pinned tight at the back of her head, and a face that had learned long ago how to keep its opinions buried. She had worked for Evelyn's father first, before the Kane men bought the Hart name with a wedding ring and a promise nobody meant to keep. Ruth knelt beside the broken cup. The sound of porcelain scraping against metal made Evelyn flinch. Ruth noticed. Of course she noticed. Ruth noticed everything. She had noticed the nights Evelyn stood at the top of the stairs waiting for Grayson to come home. She had noticed the dinners gone cold. She had noticed the clean, untouched pillow on Grayson's side of the bed in the master suite before he stopped pretending and moved into the West Wing entirely. Ruth swept the largest piece of the cup into the pan. It was the curved blue side with the painted little rose. Evelyn's mother had loved blue china. Cheap blue china, not the kind displayed in glass cabinets and never touched. Rosehart had believed pretty things should be used or else they became graves for dust. Evelyn looked at the shard in Ruth's pan and felt her throat tighten. She gave me that, Evelyn said. Ruth stopped sweeping. I know, Mrs. Kane. The title sounded wrong. It had always sounded wrong. Mrs. Kane was a woman who belonged beside Grayson in photographs, dressed in silk, smiling without showing too much feeling. Evelyn was something smaller than that. Or maybe something bigger. She did not know anymore. How long did everyone know, Evelyn asked. Ruth kept her eyes down. Know what, ma'am? Evelyn almost laughed. It came out like air breaking. That he did not love me. Ruth's fingers tightened around the broom handle. From the hallway, one of the guards shifted his weight. Evelyn heard leather shoes against marble. She did not turn. Let him listen. Let the whole house listen. They had all watched her humiliation for 11 months. They could watch what came after it. Mrs. Kane, Ruth said softly, "Some things are understood in houses like this." Evelyn finally looked at her. In houses like this, she repeated. Ruth's eyes lifted for the first time. They were pale gray and tired, but not cold. Yes, Ruth said. In houses built by men who call cruelty business. The words should have shocked Evelyn. Instead, they settled somewhere inside her like truth finally finding its chair. Ruth set the dustpan on the table. Then she took 2 careful steps closer. Your father left something for you, Ruth said. Evelyn's breath caught. The guard in the hallway went still. Ruth's voice dropped until it was almost nothing. Not here. Evelyn understood. She stood slowly, though her knees did not feel reliable. The chair scraped the marble. It sounded too loud in the room. Ruth picked up the dustpan again and looked toward the guard. Mrs. Kane has a headache, Ruth said, her voice returning to its proper servant tone. She should rest before dinner. The guard gave a small nod. He was young, maybe 27, with a scar near his left ear and eyes trained not to show sympathy. But as Evelyn passed him, he looked away. That was the closest thing to mercy anyone in that house had offered her in months. Ruth followed 2 steps behind her up the grand staircase. The Lake Forest mansion had been built to impress men who already had everything. It had 6 bedrooms, 3 kitchens, 12 fireplaces, a wine cellar beneath the east wing, and a private dock on the lake that Evelyn had never used. The halls were lined with oil paintings of men in dark suits and women in pearls, all of them looking down as if judging the living for failing to remain silent enough. Evelyn used to walk through those halls carefully as if the house might reject her if she made too much noise. Now she walked through them with bare anger under her skin. At the top of the stairs, Ruth turned left instead of right. Not your room, Ruth whispered. Your father's study. Evelyn looked down the long corridor. William Hart's study sat at the far end of the 2nd floor facing the lake. Grayson had ordered it locked after the wedding, claiming the old room made the house feel divided. Evelyn had protested only once. She had not asked for much in that marriage, but she had asked for that room to remain as it was. Grayson had stared at her for a long moment that day. Then he had said, "Fine." 1 word. No warmth. No argument. At the time, Evelyn thought she had won something. Now she wondered if Grayson had only been waiting to search it when she stopped paying attention. Ruth pulled a brass key from the pocket of her apron. You had a key, Evelyn whispered. I had many things your father asked me to keep. The lock turned with a soft click. The door opened. The room smelled exactly the same. Cigar smoke, leather, old paper, dust, a trace of cedar from the bookshelves. For one aching second, Evelyn was 10 years old again, standing beside her father's desk while William Hart signed papers and told her that powerful men were simply frightened men who had learned to speak first. Her father had been handsome in the way old lions are handsome. Thick silver hair, heavy shoulders, a voice that filled rooms without rising. He could make judges laugh, priests lower their eyes, and killers stand straighter. To Evelyn, he had been bedtime stories, Sunday pancakes, and hands large enough to make the world feel less sharp. He had died 14 months earlier. A stroke, they said. Quick and private. Found on the floor of a hotel suite in St. Louis with a half-finished glass of bourbon beside him. 3 months after the funeral, Grayson Kane married his daughter. Evelyn had not questioned the timing then. Grief makes strange things seem merciful. She had believed Grayson was saving her from a world she did not understand. Now she stood in her father's study and wondered whether she had ever understood anything at all. Ruth closed the door behind them. The painting, she said. Evelyn looked at the wall behind the desk. The fox hunt painting hung exactly where it always had. Virginia hills, red coats, dogs frozen mid-leap, men on horses charging after something terrified and unseen. Grayson had hated that painting from the moment he saw it. Old money pretending it did not steal from someone first he had said. Evelyn had refused to take it down. It had been the only argument she had ever won with him. She stepped toward it now and gripped the heavy frame with both hands. The painting was larger than she remembered and heavier. For a second it did not move. Then Ruth came beside her, placed one hand under the frame, and helped her lift. Behind it was a steel safe built into the wall. Evelyn stared. Her heartbeat changed. Not faster, deeper, as if something beneath the floor had started knocking back. Ruth let out a slow breath. He said you would know the combination. I do not. He said your mother's birthday. Evelyn's eyes burned. My mother was born May 3rd. Ruth did not move. Evelyn reached for the dial. Her fingers were cold. She entered the numbers slowly. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. A bitter little sound escaped her mouth. Maybe he was wrong. Your father was many things, Ruth said. Careless was not one of them. Evelyn closed her eyes. Her mother, Rose Hart, had been born May 3rd. That was what the birth certificate said. That was what was printed in old newspaper clippings and engraved on the small gold bracelet William had given her for her 30th birthday. But when Evelyn was little, her mother had once told her a secret while brushing her hair. I have 2 birthdays, Evie Rose had whispered. The one the world knows, and the one that belongs to me. Evelyn had giggled. Why, Rose had smiled in the mirror. A sad smile. A beautiful smile. Because sometimes a woman needs one life to survive and another to remember who she was. The real birthday was September 9th. Evelyn turned the dial again. 9. 9. The year. The safe clicked. Ruth crossed herself. Evelyn looked at her. Ruth's face had gone pale. You knew it would open, Evelyn said. I hoped it would not have to. Evelyn pulled the door open. Inside was no jewelry, no gun, no stack of cash. Only a thick manila envelope yellowed at the edges, a black leather ledger, several folded bank documents, and a sealed letter with her name written in her father's hand. Evelyn touched the letter first. Her name looked like childhood, like safety, like Sunday mornings before the world had teeth. Evie. Not Evelyn. Evie. Her hands began to tremble. Ruth backed toward the door. I will stand outside, she said. Ruth? The old woman stopped. What is this? Ruth looked at the safe, then at Evelyn. The reason men smiled at your father when they wanted him dead. Then she stepped into the hall and closed the door. Evelyn stood alone with the dead. For a long moment she could not open the letter. She sat behind her father's desk instead in the great brown leather chair that had always made her feel small. The chair swallowed her. The lake beyond the window was flat and gray, the November sky hanging low enough to press against the glass. She broke the seal. The paper smelled faintly of smoke. My sweet Evie. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and the truth has come for you in a form I failed to prevent. Evelyn pressed one hand to her mouth. Her father's voice filled the room as clearly as if he stood beside her. I know you will want to hate me. Perhaps you should. A father is supposed to leave his daughter a clean name, a safe home, and a life she can enter without fear. I am leaving you none of those things. I gave you to Grayson Kane because the men who smiled at my funeral would have eaten you alive before the dirt settled. Grayson was the only man in Chicago strong enough to make them wait. He was not chosen for tenderness. He was chosen because wolves hesitate before biting another wolf. Evelyn's vision blurred. She forced herself to keep reading. Do not mistake this for wisdom. It was desperation dressed as strategy. I told myself marriage to him would protect you. I told myself you were young enough to learn happiness inside a guarded house. I told myself many lies because fathers are cowards when the truth threatens their children. Inside this envelope is the part of my life I kept hidden from the men who thought they owned me. Roots, payments, judges, officers, accounts, names of men who would rather kill you than see their own signatures printed in daylight. There is more. There are truths about the Canes, about me, and about your mother that I did not have the courage to speak while I was alive. Evelyn stopped. The room seemed to narrow around her. About your mother. Rose Hart had died when Evelyn was 11. Cancer, they said. Quiet, fast, cruel. One summer she was laughing in the kitchen with flour on her cheek, and by the end of August, she was gone. William had cried at the funeral. Not politely, not for show. He had folded over her coffin like a man split in half. Evelyn had spent years believing that was proof of love. She looked back at the letter. Use what I left you to leave. Not to fight. Not at first. Men like Grayson Cain are built for war, and war will ask you to become something you may not survive becoming. Leave first. Breathe first. Then decide what kind of woman you want to be when no one is telling you what your name is worth. I loved you, Evie. I loved you badly, perhaps. I loved you with dirty hands. But I loved you. Forgive me if you can. Survive me if you cannot. Papa. The letter slipped from her hand and landed soundlessly on the desk. For several minutes, Evelyn did nothing but breathe. Then the breathing broke. She folded forward both hands over her face and cried like a woman who had been holding her ribs together with silk thread. Not loudly. Loud grief belonged to women who believed someone would come running. Evelyn's grief was quiet because she already knew nobody was coming. Her father had loved her. Her father had used her. Grayson had protected her. Grayson had imprisoned her. Every man in her life had called a cage by a softer name. After a while, the tears stopped because the body can only spend so much water on the past before the future begins making demands. Evelyn wiped her face with the back of her hand and reached for the black leather ledger. It was smaller than she expected, plain, worn at the corners. The kind of book a man could slip into an overcoat pocket and carry through airports, churches, and rooms full of murderers. She opened it. The first pages meant nothing to her. Initials, numbers, locations, dates. Some entries were written in her father's sharp, precise handwriting. Others were typed and pasted onto the pages like receipts. There were shipping references through the Great Lakes account numbers in the Cayman Islands wire transfers, routed through charities, police badge numbers, court docket codes, and names Evelyn recognized from newspapers. A judge who had attended her wedding. A state senator who had kissed her cheek at her father's wake. A police commander who had once sent flowers when she graduated college. She turned another page, then another. Each one made the house around her feel less solid. The Cain organization was there. The Hart organization was there. The Crow family in New York. Names from Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Boston. It was not a ledger. It was a skeleton with the skin peeled back. And then she saw the entry. Cain Patrick. 3.2 million. October 2019. Heart failure cover confirmed. Evelyn stared until the words stopped looking like words. Patrick Cain. Grayson's father. The official story had been a heart attack. Evelyn remembered because everyone in Chicago remembered. Patrick Cain had died in his sleep, the papers said, leaving his son Grayson to inherit a criminal empire before he was ready. Men had whispered at the funeral that the Crow family arranged it. Grayson himself had mentioned it only once late at night after too much whiskey, his face turned toward the window. My father died because he forgot enemies stay enemies, even when they smile, he had said. Evelyn had wanted to touch him then. She had not dared. Now she knew the truth sitting in her lap. Her father had paid for Patrick Cain's death. Her father had placed her in the house of the son whose father he helped kill. Evelyn closed the ledger. The study was too quiet. The whole mansion was too quiet. Grayson would be in the city by now. He would sit across from Franklin Crowe in a private restaurant talking about territory and peace and money washed clean enough to touch. He would expect Evelyn to be home resting like a good wife preparing her face for dinner. He would not expect her to know. He would not expect her to have the book. But if he came home and found the safe open, if he saw the ledger, if he read that single entry, no wedding ring in the world would save her. Evelyn rose from the chair. Her legs shook once, then steadied. She placed the letter, ledger, bank documents, and envelope into her arms. At the door, she paused and looked back at the study. This had been her father's room, then her prison museum. Now it was just a room. She opened the door. Ruth stood outside, hands folded, eyes wet but dry enough to deny it if asked. "You saw," Ruth said. "Some of it." "Enough." Evelyn nodded. Ruth looked down the hall, then back at her. "You need to go to your room. Pack only what you can carry. Cash if you have it. Passport. No jewelry that can be traced. No phone." Evelyn's pulse moved into her throat. "You knew this day might come. I prayed it would." "That is not the same thing." "No," Ruth said. "It is not." They walked quickly through the hallway. Evelyn kept the envelope hidden beneath her arm, pressed tight against her ribs. Every portrait they passed seemed to watch her differently now. The house was no longer a mansion. It was a body full of eyes. In her bedroom, everything looked exactly as it had that morning, and nothing belonged to her. The bed was made with white linen sheets she had not chosen. The curtains were blue silk because Grayson's decorator said blue softened the room. The closet held dresses bought by personal shoppers, arranged by color season and usefulness to a man who needed his wife to look expensive but not loud. On the nightstand sat her wedding photograph. Evelyn in ivory, Grayson in black, his hand at the small of her back. Her smile careful, hopeful, terrified. She turned the frame face down. Then she opened the closet and reached behind a stack of cashmere sweaters. Her fingers found the makeup tin where she had hidden money for months. Small bills mostly, some hundreds. $7,000 taken $20 at a time from household cash charity envelopes tips she was supposed to pass along. At first she had told herself she was not stealing. Then she had told herself she was not planning anything. Now she did not bother lying. She threw the cash into a small leather travel bag, then added jeans, a sweater, underwear, socks, a plain black coat, and the old locket that had belonged to Rose. Her passport was in the desk drawer where Grayson's assistant had placed it after their last charity trip to New York. Evelyn picked it up and stared at her own name. Evelyn Hart Kane. A name built like a locked door. She put it in the bag. Ruth stood near the bedroom entrance listening. "Ruth," Evelyn said without turning. "Did my father know Grayson's father was in the ledger?" The silence answered before Ruth did. "Yes." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Did Grayson? I do not think so. You do not think so. If Mr. Kane knew William Hart had ordered Patrick Kane's death, he would not have waited 11 months to punish you." The sentence should have frightened her. It did. But beneath the fear, something else moved, a clean line of understanding. Grayson was cruel. Grayson was cold. Grayson had married her for power and kept her at a distance so sharp it had cut her every day. But perhaps he had not known this. Perhaps he was also standing inside a lie, only his had teeth pointed outward. Evelyn hated that the thought mattered. She crossed to the nightstand and looked at her wedding ring. 4 carats. Perfect diamond. Platinum band. Old Kane money reset into a new promise. She remembered the wedding night. Grayson had sat on the edge of the bed, still in his white shirt sleeves rolled to the forearms. Evelyn had stood by the window, trembling beneath a silk robe she had bought because the saleswoman told her it was what brides wore when they wanted to feel brave. Grayson had not touched her. He had looked at her for a long time. Then he had said, "Give me time, Evelyn." She had believed him. For months she had lived on those 4 words the way starving people live on crumbs. Now she twisted the ring off her finger. It resisted at the knuckle, then came free. The skin beneath was pale, indented, almost wounded. She placed the ring on the nightstand. Ruth inhaled softly. Evelyn opened the stationery drawer and pulled out a cream card embossed with her married name. She took Grayson's black fountain pen from the desk. It was heavy in her hand. For a moment she wanted to write everything. "You humiliated me. You used me. My father lied. Your father died because of mine. I loved you anyway." Instead, she wrote 4 words. "You made it easy." She folded the card once and set it beneath the ring. The words were cruel. They were not entirely true. That made them useful. Ruth looked toward the window. Outside, the sky had brightened to a cold white. Somewhere below, a door closed. A guard laughed at something another guard said, normal life continuing while Evelyn's old one burned quietly behind her ribs. "The east gate changes at noon," Ruth said. "There is a blind spot for 12 minutes. Evelyn looked at her. "You know that I know many things men forget women can see." For the first time that day, Evelyn almost smiled. Ruth reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a gray baseball cap, plain and worn at the brim, and a wool coat that smelled faintly of lavender and soap. "Put these on. Keep your head down. Walk, do not run. There will be a cab 2 blocks past the service road." Evelyn froze. "A cab. I called an old friend." When Mr. Kane left the dining room." Evelyn stared at her. Ruth's face did not change. "You decided before I did." "No," Ruth said. "You decided when you did not pick up the pieces of that cup." The words opened something in Evelyn's chest. She stepped forward and hugged Ruth before either of them could prepare for it. Ruth stiffened first, then held her tightly, one hand pressed against the back of Evelyn's head, the way mothers do when they are trying not to cry. "I am scared," Evelyn whispered. "I know. He will find me. Maybe." Evelyn pulled back. Ruth placed both hands on her face, old palms cool against Evelyn's skin. "Then, make sure the woman he finds is not the one he left at breakfast." Evelyn nodded. She put on the coat, the cap, the travel bag over her shoulder, the envelope under the coat pressed flat against her body. At the bedroom door, she looked back one last time. The ring still glittered on the nightstand. The note waited beneath it. The bed was made. The room looked ready for a wife who no longer existed. Downstairs, the service hallway smelled of lemon polish and coffee. A radio played quietly in the kitchen, some morning host laughing too hard at nothing. Ruth moved ahead of her, opened one door, then another, checking corners, with the calm efficiency of a woman who had spent her life surviving powerful households. At the final service door, Ruth stopped. Beyond it was the garden path. Beyond the garden path was the east gate. Beyond the gate was a city full of strangers. Cameras, highways, men with guns, men with badges, men who owed Grayson Kane favors, men who owed William Hart debts. Evelyn tightened her grip on the bag. Ruth opened the door just enough for cold air to enter. "Do not use your phone," she said. "I know. Do not go to anyone from your father's world unless you are certain they loved your mother more than they feared your father." Evelyn looked at her sharply. Ruth only shook her head. "No time." The hallway behind them creaked. Both women went still. A male voice called from near the kitchen. "Ruth, the young guard." Ruth stepped back and raised her voice. "Yes, Mr. Kane called. He wants the house ready for dinner by 7. Ruth looked at Evelyn. Her expression did not move, but her eyes did. "Go." Evelyn slipped through the service door into the frozen garden. The door closed behind her with a soft click. For 1 second she stood beneath the gray sky and nearly forgot how to move. The air smelled of wet leaves, lake wind, and gasoline from the guard trucks near the garage. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried over the water. She pulled the cap lower over her face and started walking. Not fast, not slow. A woman crossing a garden. A wife going nowhere important. A ghost leaving her own funeral. The east gate waited at the end of the path, black iron against the pale street beyond. Evelyn could see it now. 30 yards away. 20. 10. Her hand closed around the envelope beneath her coat. At the gate she stopped. The mansion rose behind her, white and perfect, every window, polished, every secret locked inside, except the one beating against her ribs. For 11 months, she had entered that house as Mrs. Grayson Kane. Now, she left it as William Hart's daughter. Rose Hart's daughter. And perhaps finally herself. Evelyn pushed the gate open and stepped onto the street, and for one strange second, nothing happened. No alarm screamed. No guard shouted her name. No black SUV came tearing around the corner with men leaning out the windows and guns in their hands. There was only the pale winter street, the breath leaving her mouth in small white clouds, and the heavy iron gate easing shut behind her with a sound so soft it almost felt disappointed. She stood there with her hands still on the cold metal. Inside the gate was the life she had been handed. The mansion, the name, the diamond, the silence, the long dining table where her husband had carved her open and called it honesty. Outside was everything else. Evelyn made herself walk. Ruth had said 2 blocks past the service road. Keep your head down. Do not run. Running made people look twice. Running made guards remember they had eyes. So Evelyn walked with the steady pace of a woman who belonged wherever she was going, even though every nerve in her body begged her to move faster. The street beyond the estate was lined with bare trees and houses set too far back from the road to feel lived in. Lake Forest in November had a way of making wealth look holy and dead at the same time. Stone walls, private drives, bronze mailboxes, empty sidewalks, windows that watched without blinking. Evelyn pulled the gray cap lower over her face. A security camera was mounted on a brick pillar at the corner. She saw it before it saw her, or maybe that was wishful thinking. She turned her face slightly toward the road and kept walking. Her hand stayed under her coat, pressed over the manila envelope. The ledger felt too thin to hold so much danger. Too ordinary. A little black book with the power to make men pray, run, or kill. A landscaping truck rumbled past. Evelyn did not look up. The driver did not slow. Her heart was beating so hard that she could feel it in her teeth. At the end of the second block, a yellow cab waited beside a line of hedges. It was older paint, faded near the door handles with a cracked bumper sticker for the Cubs peeling from the rear window. The engine was running. Exhaust curled behind it in the cold. For a moment, Evelyn could not move. Trusting Ruth was one thing. Getting into a stranger's cab with her father's sins hidden against her ribs was another. The passenger window rolled down. The driver leaned across the seat. He was in his early 60s, maybe older, with a gray beard trimmed close to his jaw, tired brown eyes, and a navy knit cap pulled low over his forehead. He did not smile. Somehow that helped. "You Mrs. Kane?" he asked. Evelyn went cold. The man saw the fear land. He lifted one hand from the steering wheel, palm open. "Ruth told me not to say that out loud. Looks like I already messed up." Evelyn stared at him. "What did she tell you?" "That a young woman needed a ride and nobody needed to know where. That was enough." "Who are you, Ben Holloway?" The name meant nothing to her. He glanced at the road behind her. "Ma'am, I don't mean to rush you, but rich neighborhoods make me nervous. Too many cameras and not enough witnesses." Evelyn opened the back door and slid inside. The cab smelled like coffee, old leather, peppermint gum, and rain trapped in floor mats. A plastic St. Christopher medal hung from the rearview mirror, swinging gently as Ben pulled away from the curb. Evelyn turned in the seat. The iron gates of the Kane estate were already shrinking behind her. For 11 months, she had watched those gates from the inside. She had imagined the world beyond them the way prisoners imagine oceans. Now she was outside, and the world did not feel wide. It felt exposed. "Where to?" Ben asked. Evelyn opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She had planned the leaving, not the arriving. North, she almost said. But north was not a destination. North was fear pretending to have a map. "Just drive," she said. Ben watched her in the mirror. "Lady, I drive for a living. That part I can do. But eventually the road gets expensive and people start asking questions. I'll pay cash. That's the least strange thing you've said so far." "I said 2 things." "Exactly." Despite herself, Evelyn almost smiled. The expression felt unfamiliar on her face, like a dress she had not worn since childhood. "North," she said at last. "Away from the city." Ben nodded once and turned toward the highway. They drove in silence for several minutes. Mansions gave way to smaller houses to gas stations, schools, strip malls, tire shops. A church with a sign that said, "Mercy begins when pride ends." Evelyn stared at it until it disappeared behind them. Her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. She froze. Ben noticed. "You going to answer that?" "No." It buzzed again. She pulled it out. Grayson's name was not on the screen. It was the house number. That was worse. Ruth, or a guard, or someone standing beside Ruth. The phone vibrated in her palm like a trapped insect. "Do not use your phone." Evelyn rolled down the window. Cold air slapped her face. She looked once at the black glass screen at the life Grayson paid for monitored, managed, owned. Then she dropped it. The phone hit the pavement behind the cab, bounced once, and vanished beneath the tires of a delivery truck. Ben raised his eyebrows in the mirror. That bad worse. He said nothing for a while. The highway opened ahead of them, gray and shining under the morning light. Traffic thickened as they approached the expressway. Trucks groaned beside them. A woman in a minivan argued into her headset. A man in a silver sedan picked at his breakfast sandwich and had no idea a woman in the next lane was carrying enough evidence to ruin half the Midwest. Evelyn looked at all of them and felt a strange, aching envy. Normal people had errands. She had consequences. Ben reached under his seat and pulled out an old flip phone with a scratched blue case. He passed it back without turning around. "Prepaid," he said. "No name tied to it." "Battery is not great, but it works." Evelyn took it slowly. "Why do you have this?" "My wife says I am paranoid." "Are you—" "Not today." She looked down at the phone. "Why are you helping me?" Ben's jaw worked once. "My sister ran from a man 30 years ago. She asked 3 people for help. All 3 decided it was none of their business." Evelyn stopped breathing. "They found her outside Gary 2 days later," Ben said. "So when Ruth called and said a woman needed a ride away from a house full of men, I put my shoes on." Evelyn held the phone tighter. "I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be alive." The words settled between them. Across the city, Grayson Kane was sitting in a private dining room above a restaurant in River North across from Franklin Crow and 3 men who laughed too quietly. The table was set with white linen crystal glasses and food no one was really there to eat. Crow had flown in from New York that morning to discuss peace, which in their world meant a rearrangement of violence by men who preferred contracts to blood when contracts were cheaper. Grayson listened. He nodded. He spoke when needed. He gave nothing away. For 43 minutes, he was exactly what everyone expected him to be. Then his phone buzzed. Ruth Doyle. Grayson stared at the name. Ruth did not call him. Ruth left messages through staff. Ruth sent notes. Ruth appeared silently in doorways and disappeared before men remembered to thank her. He answered. Ruth. There was breathing on the line. Too much of it. Mr. Kane. His spine straightened. What happened? I went to bring Mrs. Kane tea. Crow was watching him now. Grayson turned slightly away from the table. And she is not in her room. A faint irritation moved through him first. Then something colder. Where is she? I do not know. You do not know? I have checked the bedroom, the sitting room, the library. Grayson stood. Crow's expression sharpened. Her father's study? Grayson asked. Ruth was silent 1 second too long. Yes, she said. Grayson closed his eyes. When he opened them, the room looked smaller. Is her travel bag there? I do not know. Find out. He heard her moving. A door opening. Hangers sliding. A drawer closing. Each sound pulled something tighter in his chest. When Ruth came back, her voice had changed. Her small leather bag is gone. Her passport, too. Grayson's hand closed around the phone. Stay in the house. Tell no one else. If anyone asks, she is resting. Yes, sir. If she comes back, you call me first. Ruth did not answer right away. Ruth. Yes, sir. He hung up. For a moment, Grayson stood perfectly still, one hand on the back of his chair. Franklin Crow leaned back. Family trouble. Grayson looked at him. My wife is unwell. Crow smiled faintly. Wives often are when men need them most. Grayson's face did not change. I apologize. This must continue another day. Crow's smile faded. This took 6 months to arrange. Then it will survive another 24 hours. Grayson left before Crow could answer. By the time he reached Lake Forest, the mansion had already begun lying for him. The butler said Mrs. Kane had a headache. The guard said no one left through the main gate. The cook said lunch had been sent upstairs and returned untouched. Ruth stood in the hall with her hands folded and her face arranged into obedience. Grayson walked past all of them. He went first to Evelyn's bedroom. The moment he entered, he knew. Not from the missing bag, not from the open drawer, not even from the faint absence of her perfume. He knew because the room no longer waited. For 11 months, Evelyn's rooms had carried a quiet expectation. A book left open, a shawl across a chair, a glass of water beside the bed. Small signs of a woman trying to make a life out of rooms that did not love her back. Now everything was too neat, too finished. Then he saw the ring. It sat on the nightstand beside a folded cream card. Grayson picked up the ring first. The diamond was cold. He had chosen it because it was perfect, because men like him mistook perfection for meaning. Evelyn had worn it every day. He knew because he had looked at it often, usually when he did not trust himself to look at her face. He opened the card. You made it easy. He read the words once, then again. On the third time, something behind his ribs shifted so sharply that he almost sat down. Boss. Ray Mercer stood in the doorway. Tall, broad, dressed in a black coat, his eyes already scanning the room for threat. Grayson folded the note. Her father's study. Now. Ray followed him down the hall. The study door was unlocked. The fox hunt painting hung crooked. Grayson crossed the room and pulled it away from the wall. The safe door stood open. Empty. Ray swore under his breath. Grayson did not. His silence was worse. She has it, Ray said. Grayson stared at the empty safe. The ledger. William Hart's ledger. The one thing his father had died trying to find. The one thing Grayson had spent months searching for after the wedding, while Evelyn attended charity lunches and sat alone in restaurants waiting for him to arrive. He had married her for access to this room, and because she smiled at his mother's funeral when no one else knew what to say, and because once late at night he had found her asleep in the library with a book open on her chest and wanted to carry her to bed, and because she had looked at him like he might still be a man beneath all the armor. He had buried those reasons under strategy. Strategy had always sounded safer than longing. Ray stepped closer. "What do you want done?" Grayson turned. "Find her." Ray nodded. "Alive," Grayson said. "Of course." "No." Grayson's voice dropped. "Not of course. Not implied. Not understood. If anyone puts a hand on her, if anyone frightens her more than she already is, if anyone decides the ledger matters more than her breathing, I will put that man in the ground myself." Ray studied him. For 9 years, Ray had seen Grayson kill without anger and spare without softness. He had never heard this tone before. "You care about the girl," Ray said. Grayson's eyes cut to him. Ray corrected himself. "Your wife." Grayson looked back at the empty safe. "Yes," he said so quietly it was almost not a word. "Apparently I was the last to know." Evelyn reached Kenosha before noon. Ben stopped at a gas station and paid in cash for coffee-bottled water, a toothbrush, crackers, and a knit scarf from a spinning display near the register. He placed the bag on the back seat without comment. Evelyn had not realized she was hungry until she opened the crackers. Her hands shook so badly that she spilled half of them onto her lap. Ben pretended not to see. They took smaller roads after that. Ben avoided toll cameras when he could and cursed the ones he could not. Around 2 in the afternoon, he pulled into the parking lot of a low motel with faded green doors and a sign advertising weekly rates. It sat between a closed bait shop and a liquor store with bars on the windows. "No luxury," Ben said. "Good." He looked at her in the mirror. "I mean it. No one who knows your name would look for you here first, but they might look second." "How much?" "For the room, for everything." Ben sighed. "Pay the motel. Keep your cash." "Ben." He turned slightly in the seat. "Fine. Give me 50. My wife sees an empty gas tank, she asks questions. She sees a full one, she asks worse ones. Evelyn gave him 500. He looked at the bills like they had insulted him. "I said 50. I heard you. I am not taking charity from a woman running for her life." "It is not charity," Evelyn said. "It is evidence I met one decent man today." Ben looked away first. "Room 12, he said. "Ask for weekly. Use a fake name that sounds boring." Inside the office, the motel clerk had orange hair, chipped purple nails, and no interest in heroism. Evelyn signed the register as Anna Rose. Her mother's name split in 2. Room 12 smelled like bleach, old smoke, and radiator heat. The carpet had a stain near the bed shaped vaguely like Florida. The curtains were stiff. The lamp buzzed. The bathroom faucet dripped. Evelyn locked the door, then the chain. Then she dragged a heavy chair under the handle because she had once seen a woman do it in a movie, and the memory was all she had. For the first time since leaving the mansion, she was alone. She sat on the edge of the bed and took out the ledger. The room seemed to shrink around it. She opened to the Patrick Kane entry again. The words had not changed. She wanted them to change. She wanted her father to become the man from Sunday Pancakes again. She wanted Grayson to remain only cruel, not wounded by the same book that now sat on her knees. Outside, a truck started. Someone laughed near the vending machine. A television played too loudly in the room next door. Normal life, thin walls, cheap heat, and a woman reading the price of dead men. The burner phone rang. Evelyn dropped the ledger. It rang again. She stared at it. No one had the number. No one should have had the number. On the third ring, she answered, "Hello, it's Ben." She pressed one hand to her chest. "You scared me." "Good. Stay scared. Scared keeps people alive." "What happened?" "I circled back after I dropped you." Black SUV rolled past the motel twice. Tinted windows, Illinois plates. Could be nothing. It is not nothing. "No," Ben said. "I did not think so." Evelyn stood and went to the window. She parted the curtain with 2 fingers. The parking lot was mostly empty. A dented pickup, a white van, a sedan with one missing hubcap. At the far end near the road, a black SUV sat beneath a dead streetlight. Her mouth went dry. "It's here. Listen to me," Ben said. "Do not leave through the front. Do not turn on the lights. Pack what you have. I know a place. I do not know if I can trust you. That makes 2 of us. I do not know if you are trouble or the kind trouble follows. But either way, I am not leaving you in room 12 with men in a black truck watching the door." Evelyn closed the curtain. "Where my cousin Earl? Farm outside Baraboo. He hates people, which makes him useful. No questions, no cameras, no neighbors close enough to hear anything they can sell. Why would he help? Because I will ask him. That is enough." Ben was quiet. "With Earl, yes." Evelyn looked at the ledger on the bed, her father's letter beside it, her travel bag half open on the chair. Every choice looked like a trap, but staying was not a choice. "What time midnight?" "Back of the motel. There is an alley behind the laundry room. I flash my headlights twice. You come out fast." Ben: "Yeah. If this gets you killed, I cannot carry that too." His voice softened. "Then let's not get killed." The line went dead. Evelyn packed in the dark. She did not turn on the lamp. She did not shower. She did not eat. She sat on the floor between the bed and the wall, knees pulled close, ledger wrapped in her coat, listening to footsteps outside and plumbing inside the walls and the slow crawl of time. At 11:58, headlights flashed through the curtain. Twice. Evelyn lifted the chair away from the door as quietly as she could. The hallway outside was empty. She slipped toward the rear exit, keeping one hand against the wall. The motel smelled different at night, more damp, more human. Someone coughed behind a door. A baby cried and was hushed. A man snored like an engine. The back door opened into an alley slick with rain. Ben's cab waited with the headlights off. He leaned across and pushed the door open. "Get in." Evelyn got in. The black SUV appeared at the mouth of the alley. Its lights came on. Ben's jaw tightened. "Seatbelt." Evelyn clicked it. Ben threw the cab into reverse, backed hard into a narrow service lane, then spun the wheels so fast, Evelyn's shoulder hit the door. The cab shot behind the motel, past dumpsters and a chain-link fence, then bumped onto a gravel road that looked like it belonged to no map. Behind them, tires screamed. "They saw us," Evelyn said. "I noticed." Ben drove without headlights for 20 seconds that felt like 20 years. The road cut through a strip of frozen brush, then opened beside a dark field. He turned the lights on only when the motel had vanished behind them. The SUV followed, distant but coming fast. Evelyn gripped the ledger. "Can this car outrun them?" Ben glanced at the speedometer. "No." "Then what are we doing?" "Something dumber." He took the next turn without slowing. The cab plunged down a farm track full of mud and potholes. Evelyn's teeth snapped together. The black SUV tried to follow and fish-tailed wide, its headlights swinging across the field like searchlights. Ben kept driving. The cab bounced, slid caught, then climbed onto a county road on the other side. The SUV did not appear. For almost a mile, neither of them spoke. Then Ben exhaled. Still alive, Evelyn looked down at her hands. They were shaking so badly the envelope rattled. "Yes. Good. I hate paperwork." A laugh broke out of her before she could stop it. It was small and wild and close to crying, but it was real. Ben looked at her in the mirror. There she is. Who the woman who is going to make it? Evelyn turned toward the dark window. The land outside was black and endless. No mansion, no iron gates, no Grayson, no father. Just road rain and a cab driven by a man who had once lost a sister and refused to lose a stranger. She pressed the ledger to her chest and closed her eyes. Behind her, Chicago was already waking up to the fact that Evelyn Hart Kane had disappeared. Ahead of her, the road narrowed into Wisconsin darkness. For tonight, the Wisconsin darkness held. The cab moved through it like a secret, its old engine humming beneath the rain, its headlights cutting narrow tunnels through fields that seemed to stretch forever. Evelyn sat in the back seat with the ledger against her chest and the manila envelope tucked beneath her coat. She did not sleep. Every time her eyes lowered, she saw the black SUV at the mouth of the motel alley, headlights blooming like the eyes of a beast that had almost found her. Ben drove with both hands on the wheel. He had stopped talking after the county road. Not because he had nothing to say, Evelyn thought, but because men like him understood that terror sometimes needed room. He gave her that room. He watched the mirrors, watched the shoulders of the road, watched the occasional set of headlights behind them until they turned off or passed. The farther they got from the highway, the darker the world became. No gas stations, no traffic lights, no diners glowing at the edge of towns. Only barns, bare trees, wet fences, and the occasional farmhouse window lit warm and yellow in the distance. Evelyn looked at those windows and felt something twist inside her. People slept behind them. People made coffee in those kitchens and left mail on those counters. People argued about bills, forgot birthdays, kissed their children goodnight, complained about the cold, and believed tomorrow would arrive without men in black trucks searching for them. She had never envied ordinary life before. She had been raised inside too much money for that. Ordinary life had looked small from the back seat of her father's cars. Now it looked holy. Ben turned down a gravel road so narrow that tree branches scraped both sides of the cab. Almost there, he said. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. Is your cousin expecting us? He is expecting me. He is tolerating you. That sounds promising. It is the best version of Earl. The farm appeared after a bend in the road, low and crooked beneath the rain. A weathered house stood beside a barn with peeling red paint. The porch sagged on one side. A single bulb burned above the door, drawing moths that battered themselves against the glass. Somewhere in the dark, an animal snorted. Ben pulled up beside a rusted pickup truck and shut off the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the porch door opened. A man stepped out. He was large in the way old barns are large, broad through the shoulders, thick through the middle, built by work and weather. His gray hair was cut close to his scalp. His beard grew unevenly, as if it had lost interest halfway down his jaw. He held a shotgun low in one hand, not pointed, not hidden. Evelyn's heart kicked. Ben opened his door. Put that down, Earl. You look like a bad decision. Earl Holloway looked at him, then at Evelyn through the windshield. At this hour, everybody is a bad decision. Ben climbed out into the rain. The two men faced each other for a long second, then Earl stepped down from the porch and pulled Ben into a hard embrace. It was quick, rough, almost angry. When they separated, Earl looked at the cab again. She got a name. Ben glanced toward Evelyn. Anna. Earl stared at him. That real no. Good. He turned and walked back toward the house. Evelyn opened the cab door and stepped out. The cold hit her through the borrowed coat. Mud pulled at her shoes. Her body felt stiff from fear and stillness. Earl waited at the foot of the porch. You listen close, he said. His voice was deep, flat, and tired. You do not tell me your real name. You do not tell me who is looking for you. You do not tell me what you are carrying. If men come here asking questions, I want to look them in the eye and say, I do not know. I do not lie well, so do not make me. Evelyn nodded. I understand. No, you do not. But you will. He looked at the bag in her hand. You hungry? She did not know until he asked. Yes. Earl nodded toward the house. Then come inside. Food first. Panic after. The kitchen smelled of bacon grease, wet wool black coffee, and wood smoke. It was small, crowded, and badly lit. A calendar from a feed store hung beside the refrigerator. 2 mugs sat in the sink. A dog with one cloudy eye lifted its head from beside the stove, looked at Evelyn, then went back to sleep as if she were not worth the trouble. Earl put bread, canned soup, and a block of cheddar on the table. Ben washed his hands at the sink and took a towel from the oven handle like he had done it 100 times before. Nobody asked Evelyn questions. That kindness nearly undid her. She sat at the table and ate slowly at first, then with the quiet shame of someone who realizes she has been starving. The soup was too salty. The bread was stale. The cheese was sharp enough to sting the roof of her mouth. It was the best meal she had eaten in months. Ben stood near the counter with his arms folded. I should go. Evelyn looked up too quickly. No, you cannot. They may be watching your house. They probably are. Then stay here. Ben shook his head. My wife wakes at 5. If I am not home, she calls the sheriff. If the sheriff comes, everybody learns more than they should. Evelyn pushed back from the table. Ben. He softened when she said his name. I know. She opened her bag and pulled out more cash. He stepped back immediately. No. Please. I said no. Earl snorted. He means it. Fool has always had more pride than sense. Ben ignored him. You need that money, and I need to go home before my wife decides I am dead or cheating. Dead, she forgives. Cheating, never. Evelyn tried to smile and failed. Ben came closer. He put one hand on the back of the chair, not touching her, giving her the choice. My sister's name was June, he said. I did not get to help her. I got to help you. That is enough. Evelyn stood. This time she hugged him first. Ben froze, then patted her back, once awkward and gentle. Stay alive, Anna, he said. My name is Evelyn. The words escaped before she could stop them. Ben did not look surprised. He looked sad. Then stay alive, Evelyn. He left through the kitchen door, shoulders hunched against the rain. A minute later, the cab engine started turned in the yard and faded down the gravel road. Evelyn stood in the kitchen long after he was gone. Earl cleared his throat. You just broke my only rule. I know. Do not do it again. I will try. That is not comforting. No. He looked at her for a moment, then pointed toward a narrow staircase. Room upstairs. Lock works. Window sticks. Bed is clean enough. Bathroom is across the hall. If you hear someone moving at 4:30, it is me. If you hear someone moving before 4:30, scream once, then get low. Why get low? Because I shoot badly when startled. Evelyn stared at him. Earl turned toward the sink. Sleep if you can. She took the ledger and envelope upstairs. The room was smaller than her closet at the Kane mansion. A bed with a faded quilt, a wooden chair, a dresser with one missing handle, a crucifix on the wall, a window looking out into black fields and rain. Evelyn locked the door. Then she sat on the bed and opened the ledger. At first she thought she would read only enough to understand what to do. She told herself she would stop before the book became too much. But the pages pulled her deeper, one entry at a time, and soon the rain against the window, the old house, the cold in her fingers, all of it disappeared beneath her father's handwriting. The ledger was not a record of survival. It was an empire written in numbers. Judges paid through shell charities, police captains receiving monthly envelopes, shipping containers marked as machine parts and routed through Milwaukee, Duluth, Detroit. Private clinics used to turn bullets into medical conditions. Real estate deals that laundered blood into condominiums. Campaign donations. Bribes. Threats. Disappearances softened into words like settlement transfer, final closure. Evelyn read names she knew. Men who had come to birthday parties with gifts wrapped in silver paper. Women who had kissed her cheek and told her she looked just like Rose. Priests who had blessed her father's hands. Lawyers who had stood at William Hart's grave and spoken of honor. Her father had not been a man trapped inside corruption. He had been the one drawing the map. She turned page after page until the man she remembered began to separate from the man who had lived. There was William Hart, who made pancakes in the shape of hearts when she was 6. William Hart, who carried her from the car when she fell asleep after ballet class. William Hart, who sat beside her bed the night her mother died and cried into both hands. Then there was William Hart, who wrote death payments in black ink. Both men had worn the same face. That was the horror. Near the middle of the ledger, Evelyn found the entry that ended childhood for good. Hart Rose, Palm Beach Clinic cover. 1.8 million, August 2003. Family version confirmed. Cancer. Evelyn stared. The room went silent. Even the rain seemed to stop. She read it again slowly as if the words might rearrange themselves into something survivable. Hart Rose. Her mother. Palm Beach Clinic cover. 1.8 million. Family version confirmed. Cancer. Evelyn stood too fast. The ledger fell from her lap to the floor. She stumbled to the window and pressed one hand against the glass. It was cold enough to sting. "No," she whispered. Her breath fogged the pain. Rose Hart had died in August 2003. Evelyn was 11 years old. She remembered the white hospital room in Chicago. She remembered the flowers that smelled too sweet. She remembered her mother's hand, thin and cool, closing around hers. But had it happened that way? Memory moved under pressure, and suddenly the edges changed. The room had been white, yes. But had there been machines? Had there been doctors? Or had there only been men outside the door speaking softly when they thought she could not hear? Her father had told her cancer was cruel. Her father had told her he had tried everything. Her father had cried so hard that Evelyn forgave the world because his grief seemed too large to be false. She turned from the window and looked at the ledger on the floor. "You killed her," she said. The words did not sound like hers. "You killed Mom." She waited for the room to deny it. It did not. Evelyn slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. There were tears, but they came strangely without sound. Her body shook, yet her mind sharpened. One by one, little memories lit up and burned. Her mother brushing her hair and telling her there were 2 birthdays. Her mother hiding a small envelope behind a loose brick in the garden wall, then smiling too quickly when Evelyn asked what it was. Her mother holding Evelyn too tightly the week before she got sick. Her mother whispering, "If the world turns dark, find the people who loved me before they feared him." Evelyn had thought she meant grief. She had meant war. At the bottom of the stairs, Earl moved through the kitchen. A faucet ran. A cabinet opened. Life continued below her while the truth rearranged the bones of her past. Evelyn crawled to the ledger and picked it up. Her hands were not shaking now. She read until dawn. By sunrise, she had 3 piles on the bed. Names she recognized. Names she did not. Names that made her want to vomit. On the back of an old feed receipt from Earl's dresser, she wrote 4 lines. "Get the ledger out of the country. Find someone not named in it. Tell the truth about Rose. Stay alive long enough to make it matter." She looked at the list, then opened the ledger again to Grayson's name. He appeared twice. Not as an architect, not as a buyer, not as the man who ordered her mother's death or his father's. Once he appeared as inherited control pending, once as unaware of heart's source. Unaware. The word sat there like a stone. Grayson had not known, at least not about Patrick Kane, maybe not about any of it. He had still used her, still broken her, still made her a wife in a house where she had been lonely enough to become invisible. But the ledger did not show him as the monster at the center. Her father was there. Her father had always been there. Evelyn picked up the pen and wrote a fifth line. Tell Grayson before the book buries him too. She hated herself for writing it. She did not cross it out. In Chicago, Grayson Kane had not slept either. He sat on the floor of Evelyn's closet with a wooden box open beside him and the first letter in his hands. The box had been hidden behind folded sweaters. He had found it by accident after tearing through the room for anything that might tell him where she had gone. At first he thought it held jewelry. Then he saw the envelopes, his name on every one. Grayson. Not Mr. Kane, not husband. Grayson. The earliest letter was dated 2 weeks after the wedding. Today you almost smiled at breakfast. I am writing it down because I want to remember that almost counts for something when a person is trying to hope. He read the sentence 3 times. Then the next letter. You did not come home for dinner. I wore the green dress because Ruth said it made my eyes look like Mom's. I felt foolish waiting, but I kept waiting anyway. I think marriage is mostly waiting at first. Maybe love is too. The next. Your mother died today. You did not cry, so I held your hand for both of us. You let me. I know that is not the same as needing me, but I am trying not to be greedy. Grayson pressed the paper flat against his knee. He remembered that funeral. Cold church, black coats, his mother's coffin covered in white roses. Evelyn beside him, small and steady, her hand warm around his. He had not held back because he did not want her touch. He had held back because if he closed his fingers around hers, he was afraid he might never let go. So he had let her believe she meant nothing. The letters became shorter as months passed. You looked through me tonight in front of the mayor. I went upstairs and cried in the bathroom with the water running. I do not know why I am telling paper this. Then shorter. I am so tired of being brave in rooms where no one is kind. Then the last one dated 3 weeks earlier. I do not think you are ever going to love me. I think I have to stop waiting before waiting becomes the only thing I know how to do. Grayson sat there until the words blurred. He had not cried since he was 12 years old, since his father slapped him across the mouth beside a freshly dug grave and told him Kane men did not leak from the eyes. Now the tears came quietly with no dignity at all. He did not wipe them away. At 3:17 in the morning, he called his sister. Maggie Kane answered on the 7th ring. It is the middle of the night, she said, her voice thick with sleep. Someone better be dead. My wife left. Silence. Then Maggie exhaled. Finally. Grayson closed his eyes. You knew she would. I hoped she would. He swallowed. His throat hurt. She has the ledger. That changed the silence. When Maggie spoke again, she was fully awake. William Hart's ledger. Yes. Oh, Grayson. She knows about my father. Or she will. Good. The word struck him. Good. Yes. Good. Maybe one person in that house should know the truth. Grayson leaned his head back against the closet wall. What truth? That our father was not a martyr, William Hart was not a gentleman, and you are not half as in control as you think. Maggie. No. You called me, so listen. You married a grieving girl because you wanted a book. Then you punished her for being soft enough to love you. Now she has the book and you finally noticed she has a pulse. I love her. The words came out before he could make them sound controlled. Maggie said nothing. Grayson opened his eyes. I love her. he repeated, quieter. And I told her I never did. His sister's voice softened, but not enough to spare him. Then you gave her the first honest reason to leave you. Grayson looked at the letters on the floor. What do I do? You stop hunting her like property. I called men off. Call all of them off. If Crow hears she has the ledger, he will send people. Then protect her from behind, not with a cage in front of her. He closed his hand around Evelyn's last letter. And if I find her, you tell her the truth. Not the version that makes you look wounded. The whole ugly thing. Then you let her decide whether your love has any value left. Grayson said nothing. Maggie sighed. You can have the empire, or you can have a chance at becoming the kind of man who might deserve to say her name. You cannot have both. The call ended before he could answer. At sunrise, Grayson stood in the dining room where the broken cup had been swept away. Tiny white shards still glittered beneath the sideboard missed by broom and eye. He placed Evelyn's letters in their wooden box, closed the lid, and set his hand on it. Then he called Ray. Stand everyone down, Grayson said. Ray was silent. Boss, all driver stations, airports, highway teams. Stand them down. The ledger can sink us. I know, if she gives it to the wrong person. There may not be a wrong person anymore. Ray's breathing changed. Boss, think carefully. I am. Are you choosing her over the family? Grayson looked at the empty chair across the table, the chair where Evelyn had sat while he destroyed the last soft thing between them. Yes, he said. I am. Far away in Wisconsin. Evelyn came downstairs as Earl poured coffee thick enough to stand a spoon in. He looked at her face and did not ask whether she had slept. Ben called Earl, said. Evelyn's hand tightened on the stair rail. Is he alive? Yes. Men came to his house, asked about a woman. His wife told them if he was driving women around, she wanted names too. They left confused. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed once. Earl slid a mug across the table. You need to move. I know a driver heading toward Detroit with a refrigerated dairy truck. From there, maybe Canada. Canada. You got somewhere better. Evelyn thought of the ledger, of Rose, of the old name her mother once told her to remember. Malcolm Reed, a man from Toronto who had sent flowers every year on Rose's birthday until William ordered them returned. Maybe not better. Maybe possible. When does he leave? Earl looked at the clock. 2 hours. Evelyn wrapped both hands around the coffee mug. It tasted burned and bitter. She drank it anyway. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the whole world still looked wet enough to drown in. Evelyn stood behind Earl's farmhouse with her travel bag in one hand and the ledger strapped beneath her coat. The dairy truck idled near the barn, white paint dulled by mud. The back doors opened to reveal stacked crates of cheese wrapped in plastic and frost. Cold air poured from inside like breath from a grave. The driver was named Jack Turner. He was thin, sharp-faced, and looked at Evelyn exactly once before deciding he did not want to know her. You ride behind the last row, Jack said. You do not cough. You do not kick. You do not decide halfway through that you hate the cold. Evelyn looked into the dark truck. How long to Detroit? 5 hours if roads behave. To the crossing longer if men with badges feel important. Earl handed her a wool blanket. It smells like sheep because it came from a sheep. Do not complain. Evelyn took it. Thank you. Earl looked uncomfortable with the words. Ben says you are worth trouble. Do you believe him? I believe Ben is usually stupid for the right reasons. That made her smile, and because the morning was cold and frightening and too large, the smile almost hurt. Earl stepped closer and lowered his voice. If they open the truck, you become cargo. Cargo does not breathe loud. Cargo does not ask God for favors where guards can hear it. Jack slapped the side of the truck. Time. Evelyn climbed inside. The metal floor shocked cold through her shoes. She squeezed behind the last row of crates, folded herself into a narrow space no person was meant to fit, and pulled the blanket around her shoulders. The ledger pressed into her ribs. Her mother's locket rested under her sweater, warm from her skin. Earl stood at the open doors. For a moment his rough face softened. "You get across," he said. "You find whoever your mama trusted. Men like your father leave fingerprints. Women like your mother leave doors." Evelyn stared at him. Before she could ask what he meant, Jack closed the doors. Darkness swallowed her whole. The truck lurched forward. For the first hour, Evelyn counted turns, left out of the farm, right after the gravel road, a long stretch of highway. Another turn. Then she lost track and the cold began to matter more than direction. Her knees cramped, her fingers numbed. The smell of dairy and diesel settled in her throat. She tried to breathe through her mouth, slow and shallow. Every bump drove the ledger's hard corner into her side. She thought of Grayson, not because she wanted to, because fear has strange habits, and sometimes it returns to the person who taught it a language. She saw him at breakfast folding the newspaper. She saw him in the church on their wedding day, tall and black-suited beside the altar. She saw him at his mother's funeral, staring straight ahead while her hand rested over his. She saw the tiny movement of his fingers that day, almost closing around hers, then stopping. Almost. That had been their whole marriage. Almost tenderness. Almost truth. Almost love. The truck slowed. Evelyn froze. Voices outside. Jack's voice, first casual and bored. Another man answered. A laugh. The grind of a window lowering, tires rolling slowly. Not the border yet. A way station, maybe. Or a toll. Or a place where a man could ask one question too many and end her life without knowing her name. A hard knock struck the side of the truck. Evelyn closed her eyes. The truck moved again. She did not breathe properly for another mile. In Chicago, Grayson Kane drove north in his father's old gray Lincoln with Evelyn's letters on the passenger seat and her ring in his pocket. No men followed him, no armored SUV, no driver, no Ray Mercer watching the mirrors. The car smelled like cracked leather and old smoke. Patrick Kane had driven it for 20 years back when power still preferred to look ordinary. Grayson had kept it in a private garage after his father died, though he never knew why. He had hated the car, hated the memories in the seats, hated the ghost of his father's hand on the wheel. Now he drove it because nobody would look twice. The highway north was flat and colorless. Brown fields, gray sky, gas stations, fast food signs, families in minivans, truckers with sunburned faces. America moving like nothing sacred had been broken. Grayson stopped at every place someone might remember a woman alone. A gas station outside Milwaukee, a diner near Fond du Lac, a truck stop where a cashier with silver hair looked at Evelyn's picture for a long time. "What did you do to her?" the woman asked. Grayson almost gave the answer men like him gave by instinct. "Nothing. It is complicated." She misunderstood. Instead, he looked down at the photo. "I told her I never loved her." The cashier's mouth tightened. "Did you know? Then you are worse than mean. You are stupid." Grayson nodded. "Yes." The woman handed the phone back. "I have not seen her, but if she is smart, she is still running." Grayson placed a $100 bill on the counter. The woman pushed it back. "Keep your guilt. I do not sell absolution with coffee." He left the money anyway. Outside, he sat in the car and looked at the photograph again. Evelyn in the kitchen wearing one of his white shirts, smiling at a coffee pot as if happiness had found her before anyone else woke up. He had taken that picture 4 months earlier without thinking. Then he had walked away without saying good morning. He pressed his forehead to the steering wheel. "I am sorry," he said. The words sounded small inside the old car. He said them again because they deserved to hurt. By late afternoon, the dairy truck reached Detroit. Evelyn knew it from the change in sound. Highways braided together. Horns. Tires on bridge grates. The distant thunder of heavy traffic. Jack stopped once, opened the side door just enough to shove in a bottle of water in a paper bag. 5 minutes, he said. Then we go to the crossing. Evelyn drank too fast and nearly choked. What if they open it? Jack looked at her. Then be something nobody wants to look at. The door closed. The truck moved again. Time stretched thin as wire. At the Detroit-Windsor crossing, everything slowed. Evelyn heard engines idling in lines. Voices. A dog barking somewhere far away. A radio squawk. Jack's window rolling down. Afternoon, Jack said. Cargo dairy. Documents same as always. Papers changed hands. A pause. Evelyn pressed her palm over her mouth. The guard said something she could not hear. Jack laughed. Come on, man. It smells like a dead cow in there. Open the back. The words cut through the metal like a blade. Evelyn's body went cold in a way the truck had not managed. The engine stopped. Jack climbed out. Footsteps approached. Keys jingled. One door opened, then the other. Light flooded the truck. Evelyn curled behind the crate's blanket, pulled over her coat face, turned toward the metal wall. She made herself small. Smaller than fear. Smaller than breath. Boots stepped onto the truck bed. The guard coughed. God, Turner. Told you. This is cheese. This is punishment in solid form. A flashlight beam slid across the crates. Evelyn watched its glow move through the thin edge of the blanket. Her lungs burned. A muscle in her leg began to tremble. She bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. The boots came closer. One step. Another. The flashlight touched the corner of the blanket. Stopped. Outside, a radio crackled. A second guard shouted, We got an issue in lane 4. The beam lifted. The boots backed away. You are clear, the guard said. And get this thing washed. Jack's voice stayed bored. I will tell the cows to smell better. The door slammed shut. Darkness returned. The truck started. Evelyn let out one silent, broken breath, then another. Then her whole body began shaking so hard she had to grip the crate beside her. She was in Canada. The thought should have felt like freedom. It felt like a borrowed minute. 20 minutes later, Jack let her out behind a warehouse near Windsor. The sky had turned purple at the edges. The air smelled of river water and exhaust. Evelyn stumbled down from the truck, her legs barely working. Jack handed her travel bag down. You got a number to call? Yes. Call it from somewhere crowded. Thank you. He looked past her toward the road. A black SUV rolled slowly by the end of the block. Jack's expression changed. That yours? No. Then move. Evelyn walked first, then faster, then almost ran. She reached a bus terminal with fluorescent lights and tired people waiting under dirty glass. A mother fed crackers to a toddler. A man slept with his mouth open. 2 teenagers shared earbuds. Nobody looked at her long enough to remember her. She sat near the vending machines and opened the burner phone. Her hands knew the number before her mind admitted why. Malcolm Reed. Her mother had made her memorize it when she was 8 years old, turning it into a game at the kitchen table. If the world ever turns mean, Evie, you call Mr. Reed. Is he a policeman? Num. A doctor? Num. Then what is he? Rose had smiled sadly. Someone who remembers me. Evelyn dialed. The phone rang 4 times. A man answered. Reed. His voice was old, rich, and careful. Evelyn gripped the phone. My name is Evelyn Hart. Rose Hart was my mother. Silence. Then a chair scraped somewhere on the other end. Where are you, Windsor? Are you alone? Yes. Are you hurt? No. Do you have what your father kept? Evelyn closed her eyes. Yes. Malcolm exhaled slowly. Do not go to a hotel. Do not board a bus. Stay where there are people. I am sending a car. Blue Lincoln. The driver will say your mother's middle name. Evelyn's throat tightened. Did you know what he did to her? Another silence. Yes. The word opened a wound she had not finished bleeding from. Why did nobody tell me? Because Rose asked me not to. She said a child should be allowed to love one parent until the truth became kinder than the lie. Evelyn bent forward, phone pressed hard to her ear. My father killed her. Yes, child. The terminal blurred. Malcolm's voice softened. But your mother did not die weak. Remember that. Rose Hart made choices in rooms where men thought she had none. Evelyn wiped her face with her sleeve. I have the ledger. Then your father's world is already dying. We only need to make sure it does not take you with it. 40 minutes later, a blue Lincoln pulled to the curb outside the terminal. A woman in a black coat stepped out. Not a driver in uniform, not a bodyguard trying to look harmless. She was tall, calm, with silver threaded through dark hair. She approached Evelyn and said one word. Celeste, Rose's middle name. Evelyn stood. The woman took her bag but did not touch the arm holding the ledger. Smart, Evelyn thought. They drove out of Windsor into a neighborhood of quiet streets and bare trees. The safe house was small and plain, set behind a cedar fence with yellow light in the kitchen windows. No marble, no gates, no men with earpieces pretending not to listen. Malcolm Reed waited inside. He was older than Evelyn expected, elegant even with a cane. His white hair brushed back, his dark suit softened by a cardigan. His eyes filled when he saw her. You look like her, he said. Evelyn wanted to hate him for that. Instead, she placed the ledger on the kitchen table. Tell me everything. So he did. He told her Rose had discovered William was selling protection to men he publicly called enemies. He told her Rose planned to leave with Evelyn and documents of her own. He told her William found out. He told her the cancer story was built before Rose was dead. Doctors paid. Records changed. Nurses threatened. A whole false illness assembled around a murder. Evelyn listened without moving. At the end, Malcolm said, Your mother stayed alive 3 extra weeks because she promised William the documents were hidden somewhere only she knew. She used that lie to make sure you were sent away to your aunt before the final order came. Evelyn's hands lay flat on the table. She saved me. Yes. And you let me love him. Malcolm bowed his head. I did. I should hate you. Yes. She looked at the old man. I do not have room yet. A guard entered the kitchen before Malcolm could answer. There is a man at the gate. Evelyn knew. Her body knew before her mind did. Malcolm looked toward the window. Name Grayson Kane. The room seemed to lose air. Evelyn stood. Is he alone? The guard nodded. So far. Outside rain had begun again, thin and cold. Grayson stood beyond the cedar gate with both hands visible and his coat darkening at the shoulders. No gun in sight. No men beside him. No crown around him. Evelyn stepped onto the porch. For a moment, neither spoke. He looked thinner than he had that morning, though that made no sense. His face was drawn, his hair was damp. His eyes moved over her, once not possessive, not assessing, just desperate to confirm she was breathing. You found me, she said. Yes. Did you come for me, or the book? Grayson looked through the kitchen window at the ledger on the table, then back at her. This morning, I would have come for the book. The honesty hit harder than a lie. And now Now I came because the last thing I said to my wife was the worst lie I have ever told." Evelyn's eyes burned, but she held still. "You do not get to call me that just because you regret losing me." Grayson took the blow without flinching. "You are right. That almost hurt more." Malcolm led him inside only after 2 guards searched him. Grayson submitted without a word. In the kitchen, he sat across from Evelyn at the small table. The ledger lay between them. How many breakfasts had they shared at opposite ends of a table built to keep them apart? Now, here they were close enough to touch with every truth they had avoided sitting in black leather between their hands. Grayson looked at the ledger, then at Evelyn. "I knew your father had something. I did not know where. I married you because I wanted access to it." Evelyn's face went still. "I know. I told myself it also protected you. Did it? No." His voice broke slightly. "It kept you near me. That is not the same." She said nothing. He continued because stopping would be cowardice, and he had been a coward long enough. "I kept away from you because I wanted you. Because every time you looked at me like I was still human, I believed it for a second. My father taught me that love makes men weak. I thought if I starved it, I could control it. And instead, you starved me." Grayson closed his eyes. "Yes." Evelyn opened the ledger to Patrick Kane's entry and turned it toward him. He read it. All the color left his face. "My father," he said. "William paid for it." Grayson stared at the page. For years his grief had worn the wrong enemy's face. He had built alliances broken men made decisions around a lie planted by the same man who handed him Evelyn at an altar. Evelyn turned to another page. "My mother, too." Grayson looked up. The pain in his face changed shape. "Evelyn." "No." Her voice was sharp. "Do not soften now. I need you to hear it. My father killed your father. My father killed my mother. My father put me in your house because he thought your cruelty was safer than other men's greed. And you made sure he was right about the cruelty." Grayson absorbed each word. "I love you," he said. Evelyn laughed once, quiet and devastated. "There it is. I know it is late. It is worse than late. It is after." He nodded. "I said I never loved you because I thought if I killed the truth before you saw it, it could not be used against me. And did it work? No." His eyes shone. "It only killed you in front of me." Silence filled the kitchen. Rain tapped against the windows. Evelyn looked at the man she had once waited for, cried for, prayed over, dressed for, softened herself for. He was sitting before her without power for the first time she had ever seen. That did not erase what he had done, but it made the room honest. She closed the ledger. "I am giving this to people who can burn both our families down. I know. If you stand in front of it, I will not save you. I know. If you stand beside it, you lose everything." Grayson looked at her, and for the first time he did not look afraid of the answer. "Then I lose what was never mine." Evelyn's mouth trembled. "And me." His voice lowered. "You were never mine either." The window behind Malcolm exploded. Gunfire tore through the kitchen. Grayson moved without thinking. He shoved the table up, sending the ledger sliding toward Evelyn as everyone dropped to the floor. Malcolm's guards returned fire from the hallway. Glass rained across the tiles. Evelyn hit the ground hard, the ledger beneath one arm. Grayson reached for her, then stopped when she snapped, "Do not grab me." He pulled his hand back at once. "Tell me where to stand." She looked toward the broken window, toward the muzzle flashes beyond the fence, toward the ledger under her hand. "Between them and this." Grayson rose behind the overturned table. For the first time since Evelyn had known him, he obeyed her. Crow's men came through the rain in dark coats and hard faces. Grayson fired with Malcolm's guards. Evelyn crawled toward the hallway, clutching the ledger glass cutting her palm. She saw one attacker fall near the porch. Another ran for the side door. Then she saw Ray Mercer outside through the shattered window. Grayson saw him too. Ray raised his gun. For one frozen second, all their shared history stood between them. Then Ray fired. Grayson took the bullet high in the shoulder and went down against the cabinets. Evelyn screamed his name before she could stop herself. The sound brought something savage into him. He lifted his gun with his good hand and fired once. Ray staggered backward into the rain and disappeared behind the fence. The attack ended as quickly as it had begun. Silence came back broken. Malcolm's guards secured the yard. Someone shouted for towels. Someone else called for a doctor who would not ask questions. Evelyn knelt beside Grayson and pressed a dish towel against the blood spreading through his shirt. His face was pale, but his eyes were on her. "You said my name," he whispered. "Do not make me regret it." A weak smile touched his mouth. "I would not dare." She pressed harder. He hissed. "Good. You are still capable of pain. Apparently you inspire it." Her eyes flashed. "Do not flirt while bleeding." "Yes, ma'am." The words were absurd, gentle, human. For half a second, the man on the floor was not a Mafia boss, not her jailer, not the boy raised by Patrick Kane, not the husband who had shattered her over breakfast. He was just Grayson. Wounded. Late. Sorry. Alive. He looked at the ledger tucked under her arm. "Let me help you finish it." Evelyn stared down at him. "No conditions. No. No asking me to come back. No. No protecting me by deciding for me." His voice was quiet. "Never again." Rain blew through the broken window cold against her face. Evelyn looked at Malcolm, at the guards, at the blood on her hands, at the book that had outlived too many dead people. Then she looked back at Grayson. "We burn it all," she said. Grayson closed his eyes. Not in defeat. In surrender. Grayson closed his eyes in surrender, and for the first time since Evelyn had known him, the room did not bend around his will. It bent around hers. The kitchen smelled of rain, gun smoke, coffee, blood, and old wood split by bullets. Malcolm Reed stood near the shattered window, with one hand braced on his cane, watching Grayson Kane bleed on the floor of his safe house. His guards moved through the rooms, clearing corners, checking the yard, dragging one of Crow's men in from the porch with his hands tied behind his back. Evelyn stayed on her knees beside Grayson. Her hands were red, not with her father's blood, not with the blood of the woman her father had stolen from her. Grayson's blood, warm, real, impossible to turn into theory. "Keep pressure," Malcolm said. "I am." Grayson opened one eye. "She is very good at giving orders." Evelyn pressed the towel harder. "Try not to make me better at it." His mouth twitched, then pain cut the expression short. The doctor arrived 20 minutes later in a brown coat over pajamas, carrying an old leather medical bag and the tired expression of a man who had been called to too many houses after midnight. He asked no questions. He cut Grayson's shirt open, cleaned the wound, removed the bullet, and stitched him at Malcolm's kitchen table, while Evelyn stood by the sink, washing blood from under her fingernails. The water turned pink, then clear, then pink again. She scrubbed until Malcolm gently touched her wrist. "Enough, child." Evelyn looked down at her hands. "They do not feel clean. They may not for a while." She turned off the faucet. Across the room, Grayson lay pale and silent, jaw tight, refusing the whiskey the doctor offered him for the pain. Evelyn watched him refuse it. Of course he did. Even wounded, even broken open, Grayson Kane still had to master the room. The difference now was that she could see the fear beneath it. Not weakness. Not exactly. More like a boy who had been trained to survive by never asking for comfort. She hated that she understood. Understanding was dangerous. It did not forgive, but it softened the edges of hate. Evelyn needed those edges. They had kept her alive. Near dawn, Malcolm placed the ledger on the kitchen table between them. The black leather cover was wet from rain and marked with a smear of Evelyn's blood. "We cannot keep it in one piece," Malcolm said. "Not here. Not after tonight." Grayson sat stiffly in a chair, his wounded arm bound tight against his side. "Crow knows she has it. Ray knows where she crossed. By morning, half the men named in that book will know enough to panic." "Panic makes men loud," Malcolm said. "It also makes them reckless." Evelyn touched the ledger. "My father wanted me to use this to run." Malcolm's gaze moved to her. "Your father wanted many things. My mother wanted the truth to find me when I was ready." The room went quiet. Grayson looked at her, but he did not speak. That restraint mattered. Not enough to heal anything. Enough for her to notice. Evelyn opened the ledger to the first page. "We make copies," she said. "Not one, not two. Enough that killing me does not stop anything." Malcolm nodded slowly. "I have people." "No," Evelyn said. "You have loyal people. I need visible people. Reporters, federal prosecutors, someone outside every family and every old favor." Grayson leaned forward, pain tightening his mouth. "There is a reporter in Chicago, Dana Whitmore. She has been trying to connect the port contracts to organized crime for years. My people buried 2 of her stories." Evelyn looked at him. "You buried her stories?" "Yes. And now I give her the ending." Malcolm studied him. "You understand what that means for you?" Grayson's eyes did not leave Evelyn. Yes. She wanted to believe him. That was the old wound speaking. The part of her that had once waited in green silk for a man who never came home. The woman she was becoming did not accept words as proof. "Then you give testimony," Evelyn said. "On record. Through counsel. No anonymous source. No secret deal that keeps your hands clean." Grayson's face went still. For 1 second she saw the old instinct rise in him. Control, negotiate, contain the damage. Then he let it die. "All right." Malcolm's eyebrows lifted. Evelyn looked at Grayson for a long time. "You are agreeing too quickly. I spent 11 months making every wrong choice slowly. I can make one right choice quickly." The words landed softly. She did not thank him. By mid-morning, Malcolm's safe house had become a quiet machine. A scanner hummed in the back room. Pages were photographed, uploaded, printed, copied, and sealed in thick envelopes. Malcolm's people moved in pairs. No one used real names over the phone. No one said where the originals were going. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table with a clean bandage wrapped around her palm, reading the pages that mentioned Rose. Not once. Not twice. Again and again until the words lost the power to knock her down. Palm Beach clinic cover. Family version confirmed. Cancer. She read them until her mother was no longer only the woman who died in a story told by men. Rose became the woman who noticed. The woman who planned. The woman who hid doors inside memories and phone numbers inside childhood games. The woman who gave her daughter a way out long before Evelyn knew there was a cage. Grayson sat across the room watching without asking to come closer. At noon, Evelyn called Dana Whitmore from a secure phone. The reporter answered with suspicion sharpened by years of being lied to. "This is Whitmore. My name is Evelyn Hart Kane." Silence. Then the click of a door closing on the other end. "Mrs. Kane, either this is a prank or you are about to ruin my week. I have William Hart's ledger." Another silence, longer this time. When Dana spoke again, her voice had changed. "Prove it." Evelyn read the first 3 names from the list, including one judge whose sealed indictment Dana had once written about before the story vanished. Dana cursed quietly. "Where are you? Safe enough." "No such thing." "I know." Who else has this? By tonight, more people than can be silenced. Dana breathed out. Good girl. Evelyn almost flinched at the phrase. Good girl had belonged to her father. Grayson had never said it, but men like him had carried the assumption in their eyes. Dana seemed to hear the silence. Sorry, the reporter said. Bad habit. Evelyn looked at the ledger. No, I am just learning which words belong to me. That night, the first files left Malcolm's house. By morning, they were in 4 cities: Chicago, Washington, New York, Toronto. 48 hours later, Dana Whitmore's first article appeared before sunrise. Evelyn read it on Malcolm's kitchen tablet while snow began to fall outside the window. The headline was plain, almost cruel in its restraint. The Hart Kane Files reveal. Decades of bribery murder and protected crime across the Great Lakes. No dramatic language, no romance, no marble floors, no broken cup, just names, dates, records, and the kind of truth that did not need music behind it. The world did the rest. Phones started ringing across the country. Federal agents raided offices in Chicago before lunch. A judge resigned by noon and was arrested before dinner. A police commander vanished for 6 hours, then appeared at a hospital with chest pains and 3 federal attorneys waiting outside his room. Franklin Crowe was stopped at a private airfield in New Jersey with 2 passports diamonds sewn into a coat lining and a face that looked furious enough to bite through steel. Ray Mercer was found in Ohio 3 days later. He had shaved his beard, changed cars twice, and carried $500,000 in cash. It did not help. Men who betray kings often forget that frightened servants remember faces. Grayson testified on the 5th day. Evelyn did not attend. She watched a muted clip on television from a room above a closed bookshop in Toronto. Grayson walked into the federal building in Chicago wearing a dark suit, no tie, his injured arm still held close beneath his coat. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted his name. For years, men had stepped aside when Grayson Kane entered a room. That morning, federal agents stood on either side of him. At the top of the stairs, he stopped. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Kane, are you cooperating to save yourself?" Grayson turned. The cameras caught the full weight of his tired face. "No," he said. "I am cooperating because saving myself is how men like me kept the world rotten." Then he went inside. Evelyn turned off the television. For a moment, the room was silent except for the pipes knocking in the wall. Malcolm sat near the window with tea cooling beside him. "You did not have to watch." "I know." Did it help Evelyn thought about it? "No." Malcolm nodded. "Sometimes that is the answer." 6 weeks passed. The story spread beyond crime pages and political columns. It became a map of American corruption drawn in court filings, bank transfers, and grief. William Hart's name was pulled from hospital wings and charity plaques. Patrick Kane's death was reopened. Rose Hart's death was amended in public record from illness to homicide investigation pending. That word looked strange beside her mother's name. Homicide. It was ugly. It was also the first honest thing the state had ever written about her. Evelyn gave 3 statements, one to Canadian authorities, one to federal prosecutors, one sealed under protections Malcolm's attorneys built like a fortress. She answered what she could. She refused what smelled like spectacle. When an attorney asked whether she considered herself a victim of Grayson Kane, the room went very still. Evelyn looked at the recording device on the table. "Yes," she said. Then, after a breath, "And I also consider him a witness to crimes older than both of us. Both things can be true." The attorney wrote that down. Evelyn wondered if he understood it. She did not care. 3 months after the article, Evelyn left Toronto under a name that was legally hers, but no longer chained to either man. Evelyn Rose Calder. Rose's maiden name. Roses. She chose Portland, Maine because the ocean there looked nothing like Lake Michigan, and because no one in her family had ever owned anything there. Malcolm argued for somewhere warmer. Ruth, over the phone, argued for somewhere with better public transportation. Ben's wife, who had somehow become part of the web of people who checked on Evelyn without asking permission, said Maine sounded cold enough to make a person honest. Evelyn went anyway. She rented a small apartment above a bakery on a street that smelled like yeast every morning. The radiator clanged in the night. The kitchen window stuck unless she lifted it with both hands. The bedroom was so small she could touch opposite walls if she stretched. She loved it with a ferocity that surprised her. Her first week there, she bought a blue ceramic coffee cup at a flea market. It was uneven, handmade, too heavy on one side, with a glaze that pooled darker near the bottom. The woman selling it apologized for the flaw. Evelyn held it up to the light. "No," she said. "This is the best part." She drank coffee from it every morning. No one told her she looked tired. No one told her to smile. No one watched the gate because there was no gate. She found work in an art restoration studio near the water. The owner, a woman named Helen with paint under her nails and a laugh like a screen door opening, hired her after Evelyn repaired a torn corner of an old maritime painting during the interview without realizing she was being tested. "You have good hands," Helen said. Evelyn looked down at them. For years, her hands had been decorated. Rings, bracelets, manicures for charity events. Fingers folded in her lap while men talked around her. Now they smelled of varnish dust, linen, and careful work. That felt closer to prayer than anything she had heard in a church. The letter from Ruth arrived in April. Inside was a photograph of Rose standing on a dock in a yellow sundress, wind lifting her hair, head thrown back in laughter. Evelyn had never seen the picture before. On the back, in Rose's handwriting, were 6 words. "For Evie when she gets free." Evelyn sat on the kitchen floor and cried into the sleeve of her sweater. Not the silent crying from her father's study, not the frightened shaking from the truck. This was different. It moved through her and left space behind. Ruth's letter said she was safe. Ben was safe. Earl remained unpleasant and healthy. Jack Turner had complained to everyone who would listen that federal agents had no appreciation for dairy logistics. Malcolm was in Toronto pretending not to be lonely and failing. At the bottom, Ruth wrote one more line. "Mr. Kane asked me to send the enclosed only if I believed you were ready to receive it." Evelyn opened the second envelope. Her wedding ring fell into her palm. For a second, she was back in the bedroom at Lake Forest, twisting it from her finger while Ruth watched the door. She remembered the pale mark it left. She remembered thinking the skin beneath looked wounded. There was a letter with it. Evelyn unfolded it. Evelyn. I used to believe protection and possession were twins. I know now they are enemies. I am not writing to ask forgiveness. I am not writing to ask where you are. I gave Ruth the ring because it should never have been a lock, and I do not trust myself to decide what you should do with it. I loved you. Badly. Fearfully. Too late in every way that mattered. You deserved to hear the truth before it became a wound. I cannot give you that morning back. I can only make sure I never again build a life where another woman has to break a cup to be heard. Be free. Grayson. Evelyn read it once. Then again. The words did not heal her. But they did not reopen her either. That was something. She placed the ring in a small wooden box beside her mother's photograph and closed the lid. 1 year after the morning, Grayson said he never loved her. Evelyn locked the art studio at dusk and stepped into soft rain. Portland was gray that evening, the sidewalks shining the harbor bells low in the distance. She pulled her coat tighter and turned toward home. Across the street beneath a black umbrella stood Grayson Kane. Evelyn stopped. Her heart moved first old and foolish. Then the rest of her remembered how to stand. He looked different, thinner, quieter. His expensive coat could not hide the absence of command. No guards, no car waiting at the curb, no men scanning rooftops. His hair was longer than she remembered, touched by rain at the edges. There was a scar near his collar where the bullet had found him. He did not cross the street. He waited. That was how she knew he had changed, or at least had learned the first rule of standing near her. Evelyn crossed when the light turned. They faced each other in the rain. "Hello, Evelyn," he said. "Grayson?" His eyes moved over her face, careful not to take too much. "You look well." I am glad." She studied him. "Are you allowed to be here?" A faint smile touched his mouth. "No." "That sounds familiar. It is less dramatic than it used to be. Mostly paperwork." She almost smiled. Almost. "Why did you come?" He looked toward the studio window behind her. Inside, a lamp still glowed over a half-restored painting of a ship at sea. "I wanted to see if you were happy. And if I was, then I was going to leave. And if I was not," pain moved through his expression, "I was still going to leave." The rain gathered along the edge of his umbrella and fell between them. Evelyn listened to the city around her. Tires on wet pavement. A gull crying near the harbor. Someone laughing from the bakery 2 doors down. A life ordinary and holy continuing because she had chosen it. "I am getting there," she said. Grayson nodded. The answer hurt him. She saw that. He accepted it anyway. Good. He stepped back. No plea, no hand reaching for hers, no promise dressed as a command. Just a man making room. He turned to go. Evelyn let him take 3 steps. "Grayson." He stopped. She did not know what she was going to say until the words arrived. "I hope you get there too." For a moment he did not move. Then he looked back at her, and the expression on his face was not happiness, not quite. It was something more fragile, something that knew better than to ask for more. "Thank you," he said. Then he walked away into the rain. Evelyn stood beneath the streetlight until he disappeared around the corner. Her chest ached, but it did not collapse. That was how she knew the ache was no longer a cage. She walked home alone, past the bakery, past the darkened florist, past the bookstore with a handwritten sign in the window. The rain softened the city around her. In the reflection of the glass, she saw herself. Not Mrs. Kane, not William Hart's daughter, not the woman at the breakfast table with her heart breaking beside a shattered cup. Just Evelyn. She reached her apartment, climbed the narrow stairs, and unlocked the door. The room smelled faintly of bread from below and turpentine from her coat. Her blue cup sat in the sink. Her mother's photograph watched from the shelf. The wooden box remained closed. Evelyn crossed to the window and opened it with both hands. Cold ocean air entered the room. She breathed it in all the way down. The night Grayson Kane told her he never loved her, she had thought the sentence ended her life. It had only ended the part that was never hers. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, Evelyn smiled.